Boker Tov, Talmidim, Chavarim. I don't know why I'm calling you students. My friends, have a good morning this morning, my friends. It's time for Taste of Torah 2022, and we are in the portion known as Behar. And the reason is that we are in Behar, even though you look at your calendar on your wall or on your device, and it looks like it should have been the previous portion and more. The fact of the matter is, I'm traveling faster than the speed of the diaspora because I insist on using the Israeli readings, which take us 1 week ahead of the readings in the rest of the world, at least until the High Holy Days. So, anyway, I'm talking about Bahar. And for my object lesson today, I want to show you my antelope jaw. My antelope jaw actually came to me because, of course, we are also in the observance of the Sifrat HaOmer, the gathering of the sheafs of the Omer, and this is here to teach us about stuff and the importance of stuff and how incredibly rich we are in stuff. Because even as late as the Iron Age, where we've already developed bronze technology, and even at the very cusp of things, they've developed iron technology, many of our ancestors would use this as a scythe to harvest their barley wheat. I was out last week in my backyard seeking out all that grass that I haven't yet bothered to mow. And I was using this to cut, and actually, they're nicely serrated antelope teeth, so it makes for a nice saw-like device to do that. Now, in time, our ancestors would become a little richer, and they would adopt flint edge tools, and then they would become a little bit richer, and they would get bronze scythes and then iron scythes. And then we arrive at the crisis moment that we had here over the summer at Kolami, where we decided we were going to purge a lot of stuff because we had too much stuff in our building. Uh, it's a perfectly logical decision, but it was tormenting to me because I'm basically a Paleolithic person. And as much stuff as I might have in the moment, I'm always anxious that somehow I will run out of stuff. And therefore, I have to hoard stuff, and just in case I'm going to need it in the future. So the whole process of hauling out so many of the things that we had assembled here at Kolami over the past 30 years and throwing it out was kind of traumatic for me, which is slightly relevant to our Torah portion this week, because in our Torah portion this week, we are asked to surrender our anxiety about a very central stuff, which is food. So, in our Torah portion, we are introduced to a concept that we would call sustainable agriculture today. In ancient times, it was called shmita. Shmita means release in Hebrew, and the idea was that just as you and I and our children and our maidservants and our manservants and our beasts who labor on our behalf all get 1 day in 7 off to rest, revitalize, and recuperate in imitation of God, so too, according to our current Torah portion, the earth, the land that we use, particularly in the land of Israel, gets 1 year in 7 off. And we are obligated to give up our determination to hoard stuff in the form of yet another crop of food for 1 year and let it lie fallow. Now, on one level, that sounds like a vacation, but I'm sure for most of the ancients who thought like I do, that you can never have enough stuff, and the idea that we should stop producing food for a year must have given our ancestors palpitations and anxiety and all this sort of thing. Though it is, as we now understand, pretty good sustainable agriculture to let the land rest and produce some natural growth for a year, uh, put some of the nitrogen back into the soil, allow more drainage and the things that we normally manipulate in the farm fields for all of that to happen. But that's the shmita, the 1 year of release. So Behar describes this in some detail. We simply let it be, in the sense of the Beatles, right? Just let it be. And so our farmland, our orchards, our properties that normally we cultivate may in fact naturally produce things. And during that 1 year, when they naturally produce stuff that we didn't deliberately plant or tend or harvest, anyone can use those products. So if your trees naturally produce fruit, even though you're not pruning them and caring for them and fertilizing them, any fruit that comes off of that you can eat, but so can anybody else. If your farmland, because there are still seeds left in the ground, produces stalks, um, uh, despite not actively producing them, you can eat those, but so can everyone else. So the Shemitah year is almost, if we were to take our imagination a little further back, a momentary, temporal restoration of what was supposedly going on in the Garden of Eden, where um, actually the amount that human beings had to do in order for the land to be fruitful was minimal. Um, I'm sure that's how the ancient priests imagine it. I can't myself imagine that it wouldn't be stressful to not be producing a crop each and every year. It involves a lot of advanced planning. I'm going to have to be able to eat off of my stores for at least a year. So I'm sure it was anxious in the year leading up to the Shemitah. And if there were any issues, I'm sure it created problems for our ancestors, including the potential of famine. And for that reason, it's really hard to find evidence that our ancient Israelite ancestors actually followed this calendar. Um, to just decide to take 1 year off in seven and do nothing, I think is again sort of contrary to human nature. It may be a godly thing, but it's not a human thing. So, um, as a result, we read things in the Talmud like, who is strong? He who observes the Shemitah year or keeps the Shemitah year. So I think this was an ideal that probably existed more in the imagination of our ancestors than it existed in reality, but it's a nice ideal. It's an ideal that we all deserve a certain amount of rest, that we all deserve to be refreshed and to recover. It is the fundamental basis for how we hopefully operate today. That we work for a certain number of days, but we get certain number of days off. That we work throughout the year, but we also get days of vacation. That we have opportunities to recover and rest. And that's the idea behind what's going on in Behar. The symbolic number of seven, of course, is absolutely critical. So you have a Shemitah year once every 7 years, and then when you hit 49 years, you hit what's called in Hebrew the yovel, or we know it in English as the Jubilee. We don't really think about what a Jubilee is. We normally associate it with like a 50-year anniversary. But that's about it. And in the Israelite concept, this is the time when everything is reset to its original place. And that means economically, the people who may have had to surrender their land, their property, their stuff, their ancestral stuff, the stuff that they inherited because of economic necessity, because of difficulties and things like that, that stuff is restored to them and they get it back. So there's a reset, an economic reset that would happen at the yovel to ensure that no Israelite family over the long term would end up permanently impoverished. And that's an even more beautiful idea. Now, just think of it this way: in 50 years, all the stuff that we threw out over the summer will come back to us again. Well, maybe not that exactly, but the fundamental sense that we can never be so alienated from the wealth that our ancestors had that we are permanently an impoverished class. That's the goal all round, that everyone has access to what they need over the long term, over and across generations. So that's Behar, and it's kind of beautiful. How we would realize that in the modern era is up for negotiation. But think about it. Think about what we deserve. Oh, and of course, if you weren't aware, I'm getting my shmita, my sabbatical, in the form of 3 months off to do research and study Torah and travel and things like that. So I do get some benefit from the biblical tradition. I hope you do too. So that's our taste of Torah for this week. And shalom chaverim, goodbye, my friends, and we'll be meeting together online next week.